Today we are looking at properties of operations problems with rational numbers. In our I can statement, I can use properties of operations to add, subtract, multiply, and divide rational numbers. So, properties of operation with rational numbers. We talked about these properties at the end of chapter 1, but just as a review of some of them. So, can change the order of numbers when adding or multiplying. That is the commutative property. Can add or move parentheses to group numbers in addition or multiplication problems. That's the associative property. Commutative change, the order. Associative add, parentheses. All right, can multiply a number in front of parentheses by everything inside the parentheses. That is the distributive property. A number times 1 or a number plus 0 equals the original number. That is the identity property. And then a number added to its opposite equals 0, or a number multiplied by reciprocal equals 1. And that is the inverse property. All right, so let's start by just looking at some addition ones. We saw ones just like this in chapter 1, but this time we have decimals and fractions instead of integers. So our problem, negative 5 tenths plus 3 tenths plus negative 8 tenths plus 5 tenths. It's always a good idea when you have multiple numbers to look for inverses. Here it's an addition, so we're looking for additive inverses. Those are numbers that are opposites of each other. Same sign, different, same number, different sign. Okay, so we're going to start by just writing those inverses next to each other. Negative 5 tenths plus 5 tenths. And then the other numbers in the problem, 3 tenths, 8 tenths, negative 8 tenths. Okay, so that is the commutative property. All right, when we combine those inverses, we get 0. That's the inverse property. Then we add what we have left. 3 tenths plus negative 8 tenths. Different signs, find the difference. 8 minus 3 is 5. So we have 5 tenths. It's going to be negative because we have more negatives. Negative 5 tenths. All right, so let's look at this one. I have 1 and 2 tenths plus negative 6 tenths minus 1 and 2 tenths minus 3 and 4 tenths plus 6 tenths. And I have some subtraction signs here. And I can't use properties if I have subtraction signs. So we're going to change those into addition. We're going to use boom, change to addition, and boom, change the sign. So boom, change to addition, boom, change the sign, boom, change to addition, boom, change the sign. So now those are negative 1 and 2 tenths and a negative 3 and 4 tenths. All right, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to use commutative property. We're going to change the order so that our inverses are next to each other. So 1 and 2 tenths, and its inverse, negative 1 and 2 tenths, plus our negative 6 tenths, plus our positive 6 tenths. So that was commutative property. Now I have multiple groups here, so I'm going to go ahead and just add some parentheses around them. Adding in those parentheses, that's the associative property to group them. Okay, all of that equals 0. So now I only have one number plus 0. So that's going to be the identity. This is the inverse property combining and canceling out the inverse. And then the last one, when I'm just adding by 0 and nothing else, that's the identity property. A number plus a 0 equals itself, negative 3 and 4 tenths. All right, C is same thing. I have some fractions this time. I do still have subtraction, so I need to start by taking that problem and changing the subtraction into addition. Boom, change to addition. Boom, change the sign. Negative 2/3 plus negative 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 4/5. Okay, my reciprocals, or I'm sorry, not reciprocals, my inverses are next to each other already. So instead of using commutative property to change the order, I'm just going to use associative property to group them. Okay, when I add those together, I'm combining my inverses, they get equal 0. That's the inverse property. Okay, now before I rewrite these numbers on the next line, because they're fractions, I need to find a common denominator. So when I rewrite them, I'm going to write them with a common denominator. And 3 and 5, my least common denominator is going to be 15. Remember, if you're not sure about what common denominator you can use, you can always multiply the numbers times each other, the denominator by each other. Okay, so 3 times 5 is 15. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. 5 times 3 is 15. 4 times 3 is 12. So negative 10 fifteenths plus 12 fifteenths, different signs, find the difference. 12 minus 10 is 2. 15 is my common denominator. More positives, answers positive. So 2 fifteenths, I'm going to rewrite it where I have a little more space just to make it, it kind of almost looks like a 3 there. 2 fifteenths is my final answer. All right, so all of that was very, very similar to the types of problems that we have done in Chapter 1 with the properties. But now we're going to use some multiplicative inverses. And another word for multiplicative inverses is reciprocals. They have the same numbers, but one of them is flip-flopped compared to the other. Reciprocals actually multiply to equal 1. With your using multiplication, getting things to equal 1 is how you're going to cancel things out. All right, so I have negative 3/8 times 2/5 times negative 1/4 times 5/2. All right, so I'm going to start by using that commutative property, and I'm going to find my multiplicative inverses, and I'm going to put them next to each other. 2/5 and 5/2 are multiplicative inverses, or reciprocals. 2/5, 5/2. 2 on top, 5 on bottom. This is the flip-flop of that. 5 on top, 2 on bottom. When I multiply 2 times 5 and 5 times 2, I get 10 over 10, which is 1. They cancel each other out. Okay, so that is the inverse property. It does not equal 0. If it equals 0 in its multiplication, the whole thing is equaling 0. It doesn't equal 0, it's just canceling out, so it's not going to affect the rest of the problem, because 1 times a number equals that same number. So now I'm going to ignore the 1. I'm going to focus on the rest of this problem. Negative 3/8 times negative 1/4. So I've got it rewritten right here. I'm going to multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. Same sign, answer is positive. 8 times 4 is 32. So 3 over 32 is our final answer. All right, let's take a look at this next one. So I've got some division in here as well as the multiplication. If I want to use things like commutative property or associative property, I need to change everything to multiplication. We use keep, change, flip for that. Okay, so keep, change, flip. I'm just looking at the number that comes after the division. So keep the 6/7, negative 6/7, change this to multiplication, and then flip it. That's going to be 4/3 now. Okay, that stays the same. Multiplications in front. Multiplications in front, that stays the same. And then I've got this divided by negative 2/3. Keep, change, flip on this one as well. So change that division to multiplication, flip this fraction. It's now going to be negative 3/2. All right. Now we look to see if we have any inverses that we can be next to each other. This one happens to have 2 sets of multiplicative inverses. negative 6/7 and negative 7/6, and 3/4 and 4/3. Okay, so that was a commutative property that we just used to change the order. Okay, so now we're going to group them so that our inverses are next to each other. Negative 6/7 times negative 7/6, 3/4 times 4/3. I added in parentheses, that is the associative property. Okay, so all of our inverses combine to equal 1. That is the inverse property. So we used the inverse property to combine the multiplicative inverses to make 1. And then the only thing we have left to do is multiply times 1. That is the identity property. Multiplying by 1 does not change the value of that answer. Negative 3/2. Fraction problems always need a simplified answer. This is an improper fraction, so I need to make it into a mixed number, negative 1 and 1/2. 2 goes into 3 once, with 1 as a remainder. All right, let's take a look at a couple story problems. So here the directions say use the properties of operations to solve each real-world problem and explain each step. So for A here, it says Jason's bank statement was ripped as shown. What is the closing balance of Jason's bank statement? Okay, so its opening balance is 0, and then we have the deposits. Remember, deposit means you're putting money in the bank. It's a positive value. Withdrawal means that we're taking money out, so it's a negative value. Okay, so we've got 3 positive numbers and 2 negative numbers that we're going to combine here. So take a look at the numbers. We can add in any order that we want to. I'm going to go ahead and write out the problem. I'm going to write it horizontally for right now, and I'm going to write it in the order that they give it to you. Okay, actually I'm going to put this negative 50 first just because I ran out of space. All right, that's what our problem looks like horizontally. Go ahead and pause the video and find the sum. Okay, so let's go ahead and check our answers. You could group and regroup however you want to. I would use the commutative property first to put my inverses together. So I'm going to just rewrite it with those next to each other. I'm really going to have to squeeze it in here. Okay. All right, so these two, commutative property and associative property, I'm going to group them together. Those equal 0. Now I can decide which two to add next. I'm going to do same sign, find the sum. I'm going to do my same sign numbers. I'm actually going to do that addition off to the side so I can line up those decimal places. $154.29 plus $25.71. 9 plus 0, I'm sorry, 9 plus 1 is 10. Write the 0, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 7 is 10 again. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 2 is 8. And then 1 plus 0 is 1. So $180 is just this part. Then I have this negative 50. Okay, different signs, find the difference. So now I'm going to do 180 plus negative 50. 0 minus 0 is 0, 0. Bring down the decimal, 0. 8 minus 5 is 3. 1 minus 0 is 1. More positives, answer is positive. All right, so I have a positive $130. So that is my work right there. I'm going to move it up because you can't really see where I'm supposed to write my explanation. It asks me to explain what strategies I used. So let's see. My explanation is I used the commutative property. And inverse property. Actually, change that to put inverses together. Associative to group them, because I put them at the end. And used inverse to cancel them out. Then I added the rest of the numbers. All right, last problem. A fish tank is shaped like a rectangular prism. Its volume can be found by multiplying the length times the width to find the area of its base, and then multiplying that area by the height. The length of the tank is 1 2/3 feet, its width is 3/4 foot, and its height is 3/5 foot. What is the volume of the fish tank in cubic feet? I'm going to write the problem first, and then I'll ask you to solve it on your own. So here's your problem. 1 2/3 feet times 3/4 times 3/5. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try this on your own. Okay, let's check our answer. So first thing we need to do is change that mixed number into an improper fraction. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So I have 5/3. And I'm noticing that these two are inverses. So as I'm recopying my problem, I'm going to go ahead and put them next to each other. All right, I know these guys equal 1. 1 times 3/4 is 3/4. Story problems need a label. Let's see, cubic feet. Okay, so that's my answer. And then I'm just going to write my explanation underneath here because I kind of did my work on top of the lines. Okay, so what properties did I use? So here, I'll put this. After I changed my mixed number into an improper fraction, I used the commutative property. To put my inverses next to each other. the inverses together. I canceled them out. With inverse property and use the identity property to get my answer. So I've got all of the properties that I used to get my answer.